The king of rock and roll, Elvis Presley, is arguably the most, if not, then at least one of the most prominent figures in pop culture history. It makes sense for someone like him to be practically showering in money, and of course, as we know, with money comes flashy purchases. Here, we're going to take a look at Elvis Presley's 5 most expensive purchases ever. So, without any further ado, let's get right into the video. Number 5. A 1970 Mercedes-Benz 600 saloon limousine. Like many high-class men in the 70s, Elvis also had a knack for fancy-looking cars. One of his favorite car manufacturers was Mercedes, as many of the cars in his collection were made by the company, which is going strong to this day. Elvis purchased a 1970 Mercedes-Benz 600 saloon limousine, which he owned only for a couple of years before gifting it to his close friend, James Leroy Robinson. Although Elvis' love for automobiles, especially Cadillacs, is well known, not many people know about just how big a fan he was of Mercedes. He bought not one, but 2 Mercedes during the height of his career in the 70s, and one of the 2 lavish cars was put up for sale in the UK at Bonham's auction of import motor cars and automobilia. The car, which is considered by a lot of people as the greatest car of its time, was sold in 2010 for almost $130,000 by Bonham's. Number 4. Elvis Presley's 1955 Cadillac Fleetwood 75 limousine. Speaking of Elvis' love for Cadillacs, the king also purchased and restored a beautiful light blue 1955 Cadillac Fleetwood 75 limousine. You see, there are a lot of very cool things about Elvis that people didn't know at the time he was making waves in the world, and have only come out recently, one of those things being just how big of a petrol head he was. The same 1955 Cadillac Fleetwood limousine was shown off at the Elvis Presley Museum, and was then sent to the Elvis-Arama Museum in California, where it currently resides. The 8-seater sedan was offered by none other than Bonham's as a sale item. As you would expect, it didn't take long for the dream car to be bought by a dedicated car collector from Texas at a price of $172,000. The reason the vehicle is so astonishingly valuable is because, well, it belonged to one of the most famous people who ever lived, and also because it has the man's signature on the back covers of its original owner manual, lug wrench, jack, and even the spare tire. It's apparent that the king made an effort in leaving his mark on his beloved car. Number 3. A 1956 Lincoln Continental. We think we've made it quite clear just how much Elvis was a fan of luxurious cars, but we still haven't mentioned the most expensive car he ever bought yet. The car we're talking about is his 1956 Lincoln Continental Mark II, which is known as one of the last hand-built cars in the United States. These cars were built between 1956 and 1957, and were a limited edition, with only 3,012 ever being sold. One of them was picked by Elvis on the 4th of August 1956, and from what we've heard, he had a special place for the car in his heart. He even drove it all the way to New Orleans for the production of his romantic comedy film, King Creole. The automobile featured everything that a high-end car had to offer in that era. As for its worth, the car was sold in 1999 at a charity auction in Guernsey to an anonymous buyer for no less than a whopping $295,000. Number 2. His peacock jumpsuit. Everyone in the world, from children to the elderly, have seen Elvis owning the stage at least once in his iconic peacock jumpsuit, which he believed was a source of good luck. You're not the only one who associates peacock jumpsuits with the king. He's the person who made it a thing. The particular jumpsuit that we're talking about was worn by Elvis back in 1974, during one of his performances. He wore the same jumpsuit a number of times in October of the same year, before giving it to his buddy Paul Litchi. The jumpsuit was put on display during the press preview of A Rock and Roll History, Presley to Punk, in 2014, and was worth $300,000 the last time we checked. Number 1. A private jet. Now it's time for the most expensive item purchased by Presley on our list. You'd be surprised to hear that it was a private jet. Yes, jets being owned by mega celebrities was a thing back then as well. The king owned 3 jets. The most expensive one out of them, the one we're talking about, was one of only 204 aircrafts constructed from 1957 to 1978 by Lockheed and Jetstar. This jet wasn't like the modern jets we see today, but that doesn't mean it wasn't considered a thing of wonders in its time. That it definitely was. The jet was sold by Cruise International in 2008 for somewhere around $600,000. The engines of the jet can be bought separately from it and are worth $10,000 to $35,000.